let me finish now. Places where it was closer than it ever should have been, okay?
Because that defund the police was the problem.
It absolutely, a combination of all the things will hurt a candidate, right? And the presidential election is the ultimate test. And if you think that Joe Biden wouldn't have done better if defund the police wasn't out there and socialist Democrats weren't able to be labeled as such, and he was labeled as such.
Yes.
Okay? And the Democrats, it would have behooved the Democrats to pull that back, to be more disciplined in their messaging, and for leaders, let me finish, and leaders like AOC to throttle it back and recognize that it's not working in key places, and it will not effectively help them win. So my last point is this: if the Democrats think that the key to winning national and statewide elections is going down the road of AOC and not the road of moderates, I disagree. That's my point. As an independent, as someone who spent 15 years working with purple communities, red communities on issues where I was one of the few leaders that worked with both sides. We passed the GI Bill, we passed VA reform, we got things done that required compromise and some moderation. That's how our Congress works. If we don't focus on a path forward and the radical extremes and the political extremes continue to dominate, we are fucked, Sam. We are fucked.
I know. You and I agree that we're fucked. But I want to get back to the point. When I say you have no data to show that defund the police, let's just stick on that, or socialism if you want to say, anyway, was a function, caused this loss. That is, you don't have any data points. You don't have any data. You're just saying the outcome. I could hear. So
that's the ultimate data point.
Let me finish now. That's your story. Your story is the reason why the Democrats underperformed was because defund the police and because socialism.
No. That's not my argument. Is that didn't help.
Okay,
and it contributed. And if you don't think that helped, that hurt them.
Let me finish now, Paul. Please come on. I gotta let you speak.
But don't misrepresent my position.
I'm trying to get what your position is. All right. So that defund the police didn't help and socialists didn't help. Now, no Democrat ran on defund the police. That's just a fact. Now, wait a second. I have a different. That's your story. Your story is it didn't help. I have another story, which is I agree. I don't think defund the police helped. I don't think it hurt. I think the real reason why the Democrats lost was because we had an ineffective Congress for 2 years, where the House refused to tie the Republicans to Donald Trump.
Well, the Democrats didn't lose. They won. They said the reason the Democrats lost. They didn't lose. They won. They won the White House.
Excuse me. I'm talking Joe Biden won, but the Democrats down ballot, they lost. They lost in the House. They didn't pick up the Senate seats they expected. They lost in the state houses. Okay, so that to me...
And you think it's because they didn't go left enough?
No. Listen. What they didn't do was they didn't make the Republicans own Donald Trump. This is not an ideological argument. This is saying that every person who enabled Donald Trump, which is the vast majority of Republicans, the vast overwhelming majority of Republicans, the House leadership refused to tie.
I get your point, and I just disagree. I think the reason that they lost is because they didn't present a viable alternative, right? And let's use South Carolina as an example. Let's use South Carolina as an example. Let's use MJ Hager and Amy McGrath and all these examples, right? Let's use Amy McGrath, who I had on my show. Okay, incredible human being. Bonafide American hero, incredible resume, weak candidate. Okay, he never ran before, no national visibility, right? Now that is a candidate who absolutely, in her state of Kentucky, right, is hurt by the defund the police message, is hurt by the socialist branding.
Did you run on?
Listen, she gets branded as a socialist in Kentucky, in part because she's a weak candidate, in part because they have no ground game, in part because they're going headhunting in Senate campaigns instead of really building a bench and presenting viable candidates. There were a number of times where they did not have a viable, strong, and I would argue moderate candidate in the places where
was the ultimate.
She was not. This is where people get it twisted, right? Like I will argue, it's harder as a woman, okay, to win in Kentucky. We would all probably agree on that, right? Running against Mitch McConnell. If Amy McGrath had been a man, I'm not wishing she was. I'm talking about the data, okay? Kentucky is much less likely to elect a woman than a man. If you had someone with a similar profile in Kentucky running against Mitch McConnell, you probably would have done better, right? If you're going to take out racist, incumbent, male, white senators, you've got to be really focused with strong candidates who can come from a moderate position and present an alternative to Trump.
All you're doing right now is you're just saying your opinion. You're not.
Sam, that's what you do every day. That's what this whole format's all about. That's what the show's all about, right?
No, I agree. But I mean, there's no data being offered. You're making these assertions. I mean, and let's just be clear here. Your narrative is that. Well, I mean, you're saying
how many Democrats have been elected in Georgia since 1992? Who was the last Democrat in Georgia that was viable, right, and significant? Max Cleveland.
Max Cleveland, who was a triple amputee,
American hero who came from central casting. And this is my argument. If you run someone like Max Cleveland in Georgia, you have a chance. If you run an astronaut, okay, in Arizona, who's an American hero, you have a chance. Who also has a national profile, who can run as a moderate, who can provide an alternative to Trump in a statewide election, you win. If you don't, you lose.
Max Cleveland lost his re-election and do you remember why?
Yes.
Because they actually had an ad with
him. They branded him as a terrorist, and Karl Rove came after him and called him a traitor. Yeah, I know.
Now, wait a second. So do you see that...
Because the Democrats were on weak footing on national security. And this further proves my point, Sam, in a lot of ways, right? The Democrats have always lost...
You're talking over me. Now, let me just finish. So do you not think that the absence of a strong message, a strong economic message, a strong message as to why Republicans are bad, tying them to Donald Trump, the only person who lost as a Republican, right, a race that he should have lost in this cycle, would have been a bad idea. Do you think Charles Booker would have been a better candidate than Amy McGrath?
No, and this is I think honestly, I think the history proves it. Running black candidates in red southern states is tough. It's tough.
And Democrats in red southern states is tough.
Yeah, running. Look, here's the data. Okay, here's the data. Running black leaders from either party is tough to win in the Senate.
Georgia. What? Who's a better shot in these Georgia runoffs?
I think they're both weak candidates again. I think you've got two weak candidates again who are probably, we'll see how much external money they can drop in. But do you really think these two candidates that most of the country never heard of until 6 years ago, okay, who are not really formidable, experienced policy people who are well known in the state with strong name recognition, with bipartisan name recognition? I don't think they're strong candidates. This is a great example of where Democrats are going to unload again, just like they did with MJ Hager and Amy McGrath and Jamie Harrison, and they're going to lose again.
Who is the most well-known politician in the country that is in the House or the Senate? I mean, who? I mean, on one hand, you're saying the important thing is a national profile. On the other hand, you're saying that AOC is problematic because she has a
no, we're not going to go back there. I'm saying, look, this is what I'm saying. If the Democrats think the future is for winning statewide elections, for winning national races, is AOC, who is not even a Democrat. This is the amazing part. Is how many Democrats? Is Bernie Sanders a Democrat?
No, Bernie Sanders, AOC is a Democrat.
Do they caucus with the Democrats? Are they really Democrats? Do you feel like AOC? There's a lot of I've seen a lot of folks loving to claim her. If I were a Democrat, I would not consider AOC a Democrat, right? It's a socialist Democrat, which is different. It's basically a different wing of the party at this point.
You're not a Democrat, and she is.
But let's poll Democrats and ask what they think about it.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter. You want data? There's data. Is Bernie Sanders a Democrat? Bernie Sanders is a great example.
Registered independent,
right?
AOC is a registered Democrat.
Okay. She's registered as a Democrat. Okay, is she technically in accordance with the values of the Democratic Party? Do you feel like she is a Democrat?
Yeah,
I think the profile of a Democrat or a socialist Democrat.
Sure, of course.
Okay. This is a great discussion within the Democratic Party that I love to watch. I love to watch Democrats when they decide to add Democrats to their side.
Who's the most democratic Democrat in your opinion?
What kind of question is that?
Well, you just said.
Is there a difference between a Democrat and a socialist Democrat, Sam?
I mean, I guess.
Yes or no? Like there's a difference between an independent and a Democrat. There's a difference between a libertarian and a Democrat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Listen, you're a little bit confused.
No, I'm not confused. I think the Democrats are confused, and that's why I love having this conversation with Democrats. Because if you think that AOC is the future of your party, you're going to continue to get destroyed. That's the reality. America doesn't want it.
Paul.
The Bronx wants it. The Bronx wants it, and lots of Democratic activists want it. But in statewide elections and in national elections, it is going to drive more and more people away from the Democratic Party, and it's a recipe for more losses. That's my argument. And you disagree? I respect that. Okay, but give me an example of someone that has been as left as Bernie Sanders or AOC who's won in a statewide election in a purple state or on the national level.
Who do you think is the most? You said who would Democrats consider a Democrat? Who do you think is the most democratic example of a Democrat?
So we're going to poll it. To your point, if we're going to poll it, they probably say Barack Obama.
Okay, who do you think?
That's who most Americans would consider a Democrat because he's probably the most well-known Democrat in the world.
Mr. President, but I'm saying in terms of democratic.
Does that not answer your question?
No, in terms of Democrat, like the essence of being a Democrat. Who was the most Democratic?
Let me give you the best way.
Answer my question.
Because I can't answer your question. You don't accept my answer. So I'm moving on to a question for you. Give me an example, okay, of a socialist Democrat, right, or a member of the squad, or however we categorize. And again, I am not judging them, okay, on their principles. I'm judging them on their effectiveness to win elections. And here's my argument: if you want to see how badly they perform, look at national security and defense. They are poison on national security and defense across party lines. Across party lines, they're not voices of
Max Rose
impact. What's the point about Max Rose?
Max Rose is exactly
what Max Rose
you're talking about.
And Max Rose is proving my point. If Max Rose ran statewide, Max Rose would do a lot better than he did in Staten Island.
Well, that's because there's people to the left of people in Staten Island.
Because Staten Island is a red place, okay? And Max Rose actually didn't run right enough for Staten Island. If he was going to win, he should have run more to the right. I know you may not think so. He may feel right in New York City, but he is not that far right relative to a Democrat like a Conor Lamb. Or let's go back to a Patrick Murphy in a place like Bucks County, right? Max Rose looked conservative, looked liberal on Staten Island, but he's not that liberal. Right? But he's not right enough for Staten Island.
What positions did he take that were too liberal for Staten Island?
Okay, standing anywhere near Nancy Pelosi ever.
How could you do that as a Democrat if you're? I'm
going to go back to the same word that I gave you earlier: discipline.
Wait. What do you mean standing near her?
Why did he get destroyed in Staten Island, Sam? Because they labeled him as a socialist. They connected him to Black Lives Matter. They did a Max Cleland on Max Rose, which proves my point to you.
How could Max Cleland have avoided him being?
Because the Democrats for so long have allowed themselves to be labeled as socialists and as weak on defense and as weak on police and as weak on the military. And eventually it comes back and bites you. And that's what happened to Max Cleland, no matter how good he is. Okay, they were able.
But Paul, don't you understand what you're saying? Is that regardless of how far Max Rose or Max Cleland ran from Osama bin Laden or from Max Rose was out there. I love the cops. He was running against de Blasio. There is no winning if they're going to target that way. If there's
no, it's not. That's not the point. The point is that if the national strategy is not cohesive and recognizing how those things.
I agree.
I know.
I think Nancy Pelosi's leadership has been horrible.
I don't agree with you on that. I don't agree with you on that. Nancy Pelosi gets shit done. And a lot of folks may not like her. No, really, she has. She gets shit done. And I'm an example of someone who's worked with her and with Republicans and seen her get shit done.
What did she get done?
You want to how about the GI Bill?
She got that done.
How about don't ask, don't tell repeal? How about things like that? Are those not significant anymore?
You got don't ask, don't tell repeal. Okay. Well, I mean,
those not significant to progressives?
I don't think that was hard for her to get those done.
Actually, it was very hard. And I was there for it. I was on the ground for it. And there are many people who opposed it, including President George Bush at the time. So it was actually a pretty hard fight. There's a lot of folks now who think don't ask, don't tell repeal was easy and the GI Bill was easy. Those were all hard fights. Yes, and Nancy Pelosi's leadership, I will tell you, as an independent, was essential in creating the kind of coalitions that you need to get stuff like that done. And you're going to need it on things like, let me finish, you're going to need it on things like budgets. Budgets. Is AOC, as Speaker of the House, going to get a budget through, Sam?
What? Wait, why do you have to make her Speaker of the House? She is
because you're comparing her to the Speaker of the House. And she may run for Speaker of the House.
I'm not.
She's challenging the Speaker of the House to be a voice for the Democrats. And that's our core argument here. That's our core argument here, Sam. What's the key to Democrats winning, going forward, and being able to govern as well? That's important too. We'll put that over here, right? What's the key? Is the key going further left?
The squad to discipline the base. Is that the thing?
No.
How do we get them? So you just
I want them to discipline themselves. That's my core argument here. Is that AOC would have been better for AOC and better for the party and better for America if she had held her friendly fire until after the election. That's my simple argument.
Wait a second. She did hold. Why
she did an interview with the New York Times.
Why are you focusing on her as opposed to Conor Lamb?
Because she is influential. She's infinitely more influential than Conor Lamb. She is by many as the future of the party.
What about Nancy Pelosi?
Conor Lamb is the future of the party.
What about Nancy Pelosi?
What about Nancy Pelosi, Sam?
Do you think that Nancy Pelosi has nothing to do with trying to discipline or to engage?
Oh, absolutely. But this is where you and I'm going to keep coming back to the same argument. Personal discipline is what I'm looking for. I expect every leader, whether it's Donald Trump or AOC or you and me, to exercise personal discipline and to be thoughtful and strategic, especially in times like this when the stakes are so high.
How is Nancy Pelosi exercising discipline? Why didn't she tell her? Why didn't she say, hey, we're not going to do this autopsy now. I don't want to hear your problems.
How do you know she hasn't and that AOC wouldn't listen anyway? She's made that clear.
I'm talking about Abigail Spanberger, who came out and directly attacked all of these people. And she did it first.
And so that's it. Like, you hit me first. That's basically the core of your argument, Sam. You hit me first.
Argument is,
that's the whole argument, Sam, from the beginning to the end, is that you hit me first. That's the argument. If my kids did that, they go on timeout. If the Democratic Party does that, they go on timeout. And I'm an independent saying take the whole Democratic Party and put them on timeout. And Sam, with all due respect for you as a friend, put you on timeout too. And come back after January before we have an imminent threat of a lame duck president who has his finger on the noose.
I got to tell you, you know what, Paul? Here's what I'd say. Is that if you want to influence the Democratic Party, first you register as a Democrat.
Okay. No. How about this? If you want me to register as a Democrat, convince me I should.
I don't want to.
I know you don't. And that's why you're losing. That's why you're continuing to lose. You won the presidency and you got destroyed. That's the greatest argument I've seen yet for how you're getting destroyed down ballot. If I'm not with you, go piss off.
No, I'm just saying that
I can't register. I can't vote in your primary, Sam. I can't vote in your primary unless I'm registered as a Democrat. How about open primaries? You want me to align with you? Let me vote in your primaries.
I think open primary. I'm in favor of open primaries.
That's a strategic step forward. Opening the party to people like me who don't view. I am not convinced that the Democratic Party is a place for me. And neither are many other Americans. That's why so many are declaring as unaffiliated, independent, an increasing number of young people.
No,
as many people are running behind AOC, probably 2 or 3 to 1, are registering as unaffiliated and independent.
to the left of the Democrats.
What's that?
Because those young people are to the left of the Democrats.
No, some of them are to the left. Some of them are to the left of Donald Trump.
Well, they're to the left of the Democrats, which are also to the left.
More of them are to the right of the Democrats and to the left of Donald Trump. That's where they are. That's where 40% of Americans are. They are unaffiliated, they are independent, and they are sick of the garbage, extreme options of AOC. And
Like, what constitutes to the left of Donald Trump and to the right of the Democrats?
the left of Donald Trump is basically everyone, and to the right of AOC is basically everyone.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
You gotta look at some data. You gotta look at some polling, buddy. Honestly.
Okay, we'll pick some random obscure person that no one talks about in politics to prove someone is more right of center in the general population.
I'm talking about polls. You want to see what the polling is on young people and socially?
Yeah, what's the polling on young people, Sam? What is it?
Let's pull it up.
Oh, Google it. I can Google too, Sam.
Well, you should.
Okay.
You should Google.
Look at how many people are registering unaffiliated and independent, okay? And how that number is increasing in America. And if you think the Democrats' future to expanding their power and party is going further left, then we disagree. I respectfully disagree.
Exactly. We disagree on that.
Respectfully.
I would also say that the point is that this fight is happening in the Democratic Party. Is it unfortunate? I don't know that it'll impact what's going on in Georgia. Like you say, we have 2 candidates that you perceive as weak. We have the number 3 fundraiser in the Democratic House is AOC. She's certainly better known.
Did money help MJ Hager and Amy McGrath?
Absolutely.
Jamie Harrison?
And I think Chuck Schumer's got a lot to answer for picking such weak candidates to put so much money behind. I agree with you.
And so you're feeling really good about the candidates in Georgia right now. You feel like they're strong candidates to win statewide election in Georgia.
No. John Ossoff was the most moderate candidate that ran back in those special elections. He was the most moderate candidate they could find. He's got a lot of money behind him.
It's not just about, this is maybe one last point I'll share with you. I think the Democrats forget populism too often, okay? They forget the power of populism. And the best case I can make for that, is Arizona, okay? If you pick someone who is a true populist, like Mark Kelly, okay? And maybe you could even argue Sinema, okay? Because Sinema went to the right many times from where she used to be, right? And won statewide election in Arizona, helped win Arizona. And let me give you one last data point. Here's a data point. Biden won by roughly 11,000 votes in Arizona. There are 500,000 veterans in Arizona. 500,000 veterans who voted in excess of 95%, okay? And they care about national security, and they care about principles, and they care about defense, and they care about populism, and they care about the kind of leaders you put up. And when Donald Trump attacked John McCain for 4 years, and they presented an alternative in Mark Kelly, they won at the top of the ticket, and they won in the Senate seat. That is an example for me in how you win in places like Arizona. That's an example.
Data that came out of the testing from the Lincoln Project, I think this would be interesting for you, and I think it would be upsetting to you a little bit. Apparently, their big push on that, and I'm not saying this is indicative of anything. I just think it's the only data point that we have about that question. There's no doubt in my mind.
The data point from a group of consultants is what we're going to hang our hat on.
No, let me just finish, Paul. I mean, listen, I'm just saying this is one data point. I definitely think. I mean, in Arizona, I imagine there were people who were upset about his attacks on John McCain. I wish it had prevented him from winning in the first place.
But it made the difference in Arizona, Sam. It made the difference.
I have no doubt. I mean, John McCain was their favorite son.
It made the difference in a core group of people, a moderate group of people that voted at a very high rate, that are willing to switch parties. That's my point here. The independents and the unaffiliated, and what has been traditionally called the center in this country, in my view, is the real future of American politics, and it's also the future to governing. Because if we continue to try to govern with these extremes, we're going to get nothing.
Well, I don't know where you were over the past 20 years, frankly, that you think that the Democrats were so far to the left before AOC. There wasn't a single person who was even remotely close to.
Really, Bernie Sanders wasn't around for 20 years?
He was an independent.
Okay. I've worked with Bernie Sanders, and I've worked where I was for the last 20 years. I was in Congress, working on the Hill to pass legislation.
No doubt.
You know exactly where I was for the last 20 years.
I just don't know.
5 years prior to that, I was in Iraq. So I know exactly where I've been for the last 20 years, and I've been watching how government works and how politics gets done. And what I've seen is that the moderates are the ones who've been able to work across partisan lines in any political environment and get things done.
Lincoln Project ran an ad that focused on what that Goldberg story on Atlantic.
Losers and suckers.
Exactly.
Yes.
Apparently that ad helped Donald Trump. They did a lot of testing on all the ads. Look, this is not
like a Donald Trump fact point. Like you're telling me about a poll that we don't have data on that comes from we're talking about whether or not one ad worked. That's going to be the entire premise of the argument.
No,
one Lincoln Project ad worked.
Data point.
I would argue that losers and suckers hurt him significantly with independents and with Republicans and may have cost him the election.
I would hope.
In a place like Pennsylvania, Arizona,
so many states that were close. Polling or anything to assess that?
Yes, I can share with you the number of independent voters who care about national security and defense. Look at find some polling data on how many independents, centrists, moderate Democrats, and moderate Republicans care about issues of national security, defense, and veterans affairs.
I'm talking about in this election. Do you have any data that shows, like even exit polling that says that? I'm open.
Exit polling is the reliable data that we're going to hang our hat on. I have 15 years of experience working with all different kinds of political communities, working on the national media and at the lowest levels of the grassroots. And I think I have a pretty good ear to all parts of this country. I've traveled all 49 states over the last 15 years trying to get Republicans and Democrats to work together and succeeding on maybe the one issue when they actually do. Okay. And I've seen Republicans turn to Democrats and Democrats turn to Republicans.
Your lived experience is the data. That's okay. I mean that you could.
The Lincoln Project poll is your data?
No, it's not a Lincoln Project poll. The Democrats assess all of their ads.
Look, my data point is the election, okay? And that's the most persuasive data point I think you need to see.
I agree.
It's the same argument that if Bernie Sanders had won, you were better than Joe Biden. That's fantasy.
Like Joe Biden.
That's fantasy land. What's that?
You really don't like Bernie Sanders.
I do not support Bernie Sanders, and I do not think he would have won. I think he would have been destroyed.
You're bringing in topics that I have not even introduced. The question was ultimately, you're trying to discipline or suggest that AOC or the squad should be disciplined, and there's.
No, what I said is you keep saying that. Here's my core point, Sam.